ever done something crazy because you felt afraid? Back in the summer of 2008, the Beijing government was preparing the city for the Olympic Games. Part of that preparation was clearing the city of Waiguoren, or foreigners. Now, I didn't consider myself to be an undesirable sort of foreigner, but like all of the other expatriates in the city, I was a little bit on edge. I didn't want to be invited to leave the comfortable life that I had built for myself there in central Beijing. Well, one sunny afternoon, my worst fears materialized. Pow! Pow, 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 pow! Somebody angry, somebody with authority was knocking on my door. I tried to play it cool, and I called, "Who is it?" But I couldn't understand the answer. What I did understand was the pow! Pow, 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 pow! On my front door. My calm demeanor turned to a feeling of terror, and I started to scream through the door, "Go away! This is not your home! Go away!" But they didn't go away. And so I was compelled to turn the knob and answer the door to see the shortest, most innocent-looking little mailman I had ever seen in my life. And all he wanted to know was if I would please sign my name for the package my mother had sent from the United States for my birthday. Sometimes we fear the things that we don't understand. And sometimes the things we don't understand are people. We'll go out of our way to avoid talking to them because we don't want to have an awkward conversation. But what if we embraced the opportunity to learn something new? It's been my great blessing to work with international people for some 20 years, overseas and here at Ashland University. Every day, people from different walks of life come into my office and let me be part of who they are. I've also been very blessed to have a sweet twin sister who just happens to have cerebral palsy. Growing up with her allowed me to get to know a population of people that was very different from myself. But it also allowed me to learn how to feel comfortable with people who were not like me. And I'm so grateful for that. Because of these experiences, today I would like to challenge you to summon the courage to make a connection with someone who is not like you. When we're trying to build a connection with people who are different, the first thing we want to do is to assume strong intelligence. Isn't it easy to have a bad attitude when there's something we don't understand? "Oh, that is so dumb," we might tell ourselves. We don't like to admit that we'd say things like that to other people, but in our hearts we think, that's kind of crazy. Well, it was the first weekend that I lived in Beijing. There were 10 of us all together who had come as a teaching team. And we were so excited to go out into the city to see some sights and maybe do some shopping. Well, on Friday night, 8 o'clock, we got a flyer under the door that said, "Tomorrow morning, you need to be ready to be on the school bus at 7 o'clock a.m. You're going to go and observe your future students doing some military drills." We were so confused. First of all, why are college students doing military drills? Secondly, why do we have to go on a Saturday? Isn't that a weekend? And third, why couldn't they have told us sooner in the week? Why Friday night at 8 o'clock? I'm afraid our attitudes might not have been the best. And we talked about it a little bit and finally decided that, well, it was just this one time, so we better not make anybody upset. Only, it wasn't just this one time. It happened again and again and again. And our frustration level began to boil over until we talked to some of our Chinese friends. And they said, "Oh, you guys, we can't plan ahead like you do. In China, things change on a daily basis. The government might make a new policy. Or our supervisor might ask us to work overtime without prior notice. If we were to make plans 2 or 3 weeks in advance, like you do, we would inevitably have to change the plans. So it isn't logical to make plans ahead of time. Finally, we understood the context of where they were living. And that context helped us to understand that the Chinese really were very intelligent. They just had a different way of life than we had. Second, you want to try to understand people's starting points. When people have opinions or actions that we might not agree with, there's an underlying reason for that. There's a worldview, or there's some kind of a basis that they're building all of those things upon. So to illustrate this, let's talk about ice cubes. When we first went to China, my friends and I would save our money very carefully all month long because Western restaurants were very expensive, but they were worth it because they had special things like cans of Dr. Pepper and Diet Coke. And if you were really blessed, you might score a tall glass of ice cubes to go with it. 9 times out of 10, no ice cubes. China just didn't believe in ice cubes. Or of course, we thought that was dumb. And we would talk about it and we would say, everybody knows you need a big glass of ice cubes to go with your pop. But after living in China for several years, one day I got a stomach ache. And it suddenly hit me. You know, if it were my neck that was hurting, I wouldn't hesitate to put a heating pad on my neck to draw out the pain. Why do I think it's silly to drink a cup of hot water? To soothe my stomach. And I finally understood. The Chinese believe that our bodies are warm entities, and so putting something warm inside is good for our health. Putting a freezing, ice-cold cup of pop into the body is probably not the best thing for it. Understanding the starting point helped me to respect their intelligence. Next, whenever we're trying to understand somebody else, we want to do things like ask questions to show our curiosity. Asking questions means asking because we truly are curious, and then listening carefully to those answers, not so that we can give our own opinion, but so that we can understand the other person. I had a student in my class who was an A+ student. So when she came into my class the second semester, I thought, oh, we're going to have a repeat of the same. But it turns out that she started to miss class, and when she did come to class, she came late, and sometimes she put her head down on the desk, and sometimes her eyes were red and puffy. So I tried to be compassionate, and I asked her, what's going on? Can't you tell me? No, she wasn't open to share. But in the last week of the semester, she came knocking at my office door. Miss Jenni, please, I have to pass this class. If I don't pass this class, my parents aren't going to pay for me anymore to attend the university, and I want to graduate in the United States. Well, I tried to explain we teachers have standards, you know, and I can't just give you a free grade. Oh, she begged some more, and so I asked again, can't you tell me what's going on? There's got to be a reason for the fact that you have so many outstanding projects. And finally, she shared that she had been engaged, and her fiancé had suddenly broken off the engagement and married another woman, all in the space of 1 week. It made sense. She wasn't being lazy. She wasn't on drugs. She was devastated. Of course, she couldn't get her work done. We were able to make a plan. She finished the class and she graduated from the university. But without those questions, we never would have found out what the problem was. Stay curious with questions. Next, you want to make sure that you spend time with people. Now, I'm not saying it will always be comfortable. When you spend time with people who are different from you, it is often very uncomfortable. But by spending time with them, little by little, you understand them more, and eventually you can get to a point of comfort if you're willing to stay with it that long. There was a wonderful woman in China whose name is Wu Meisheng. She taught in the classroom across from me. I was really young at the time, 24 maybe. I looked like a little girl. Wu Meisheng came over to my classroom one day and she said, hello, and told me all about herself and that she had lived in New York and that she'd taught there for a couple of years, and American people had been so kind to her, and she wanted to pass that on to somebody else. Why she picked me, I will never know, but I am so grateful she did. She told me I had to buy a bicycle because we were going to go to Beijing Park and ride around. So off I went to buy a bicycle. She told me about her husband and how he had died of cancer 2 years before. She told me all about the Cultural Revolution and what it was like to live through that. Told me all of her deepest, darkest secrets. And she also took me everywhere with her, even when I couldn't speak any of the language. One night, I went out to eat with her and about 7 other friends, and we're all sitting around one of those large Chinese tables with the lazy Susan that spins around, and you stick your chopsticks in and pull something out. Well, there were 3 different stories. I kid you not. These people were telling a story to these people, and these people to these people, and somewhere across here, and every once in a while they would stand up and flail their arms around, and everybody would laugh. I wished I could understand what they were saying. But just watching them have a good time with each other taught me so much about Chinese culture. I can never repay that lady for what she did for me. What I learned about the culture was not something I could get from a book. And today, when Chinese students walk into my office, they don't have to say a lot. I know what their lives are like because I watched a beautiful Chinese woman be Chinese with her Chinese friends in their Chinese context. Spend time with people. Finally, don't forget that we share the same humanity. It doesn't matter what somebody looks like or what language they speak. They have the same needs as we do. We all want to be loved. We all want to be understood. We all want somebody to listen to us. There was a young lady who would come to my apartment once a week in China, and I would tutor her. I worked very hard to get the handouts ready, and we would go at it for an hour and a half. She could answer all the questions, and I thought she was making a lot of progress. Until one day she said to me, Jenny, will you still be my friend if I don't want to study anymore? Well, that question just cut me straight to my heart because I quickly understood that she wasn't in my apartment to study. She didn't really care about the content. She wanted the attention, and she needed the love. We are still friends today. She lives in the United States out west, and she's married to an American, and Facebook is a wonderful thing. Finally, whenever you want to make a connection with somebody who's different from you, use humor. My husband likes to say that when people speak different languages, they all sound different, if you're not familiar with the language particularly. But when people laugh, the laughter all sounds the same. Well, I went to the Great Wall one day with 2 of my friends. And the one young lady was leaving the next day. She still had some packing to do, so we were a little bit pressed for time. We were scurrying up to the Great Wall, and on the way there, lining the path, were vendors' booths. The vendors were desperate that day because it was a little bit cold and there hadn't been very many tourists. And we promised them, hey, we're in a hurry, but if we have time on the way back down, we'll stop and have a look. Well, on the way back down, I was thinking, oh, I'm cold, I'm tired, gotta get back to the bus. So I needed to go down a flight of narrow stairs. One of the more enterprising of the vendors saw the narrow stairs. She raced up and stood right in front of me. I thought, well, okay, we'll just go around her. So I stepped to the side, and she stepped to the side. I stepped to the other side, and she stepped to the other side. And then she started yelling at me about how I needed to come to her booth and buy something. And then she started smacking me on either side of my arms. Well, that wasn't something I was used to. I wasn't used to going to Walmart and having the greeter say, "Welcome to Walmart, please buy some bread." So I thought, let's communicate with this lady in a way that she will understand. So I just started smacking her back on either side of her arms. And she stopped and looked at me, and then she just burst into laughter because she realized what she'd done. She said, "Yeah, come with me." And we raced down to her shop, and I was cold. I bought a sweatshirt that day, 75% off. Use humor. It can take real courage to connect with somebody who's different from you. But if we are able to break out of the bubbles that we build up around ourselves for our own protection and reach out to another human being, we might find that it's not as scary as we originally thought. So don't wait. Give it a try. That most frightening of relationships may turn out to be a friendly face come to give you the greatest gift of your life.